Hey everybody, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm Matt Connerton, and to the right of me, appropriately enough, is the Honorable Gary S. Hopper.
Top of the evening to you, Matty.
And you have your, is that Cumberland Farms?
Cumberland Farms.
That's not Duncan's. You're cheating on Duncan's.
It's terrible.
I know,
It
right?
is.
Maybe it's Dunkin' Donuts coffee in a Cumberland Farms cup.
Oh.
Could be.
Sometimes
like a
you
true
zig when I think you're in a
politician.
zag. What's that?
This is spoken like a true politician.
Yes, yes.
How to bail out of awkward situations quickly. Leon Rideout is our state legislator who is running for state senate.
Yes.
The Den of Thieves, running for the Den of Thieves. Are you one of them yet? No, you're not
No,
a member of the Den of Thieves. You want
No,
to be.
I am. I don't even want to be. I kind of enjoy the outside thing where the leadership is trying to like, what are you doing?
Right, yelling at you and stuff. Yeah. No, I call them the Den of Thieves this week because they're trying to. We have in judiciary this week. We're working on a bill called. There's a thing we've had a problem with. I think in 2001 I introduced our two legislation about what's called the lorry list.
Yes.
And that was a 1990 decision where they did not tell the defense attorney about a police officer named Laurie who had done something.
Mm-hmm.
And the Supreme Court has clearly established that if he's the arresting officer, because you look like an arresting officer, really.
Oh, yeah, if I were a cop, I'd be arresting lots of people.
Well,
Absolutely.
all the time.
Absolutely.
So if he's the arresting officer and he's going to be a witness after I'm incarcerated for what did I do this time? Do you remember?
Something unspeakable, which is why we can't say what it is.
Okay, that's why we're not
It's
speaking about it.
unspeakable, yes.
So I do this unspeakable deed. He arrests me, and it goes to court. Now, if there is something in his personnel file that would infer that maybe he's not a reliable witness, then as the defense, the prosecuting attorney is responsible for not only knowing that, but making sure the defense attorney has access to that information.
Oh.
Yes.
That is what the Constitution, that's gone before the United States Supreme Court.
Really?
And that's what the deal is.
And
Okay?
I think that's a very important principle too.
It is a very important principle. I mean,
Yes.
because if there might be things that in his personnel file that are it's called exculpatory evidence. See, I learned things on the Judiciary Committee. I didn't know that.
That's a big
That's
word.
A good word. That's a good
Exculpatory.
word. I know.
I
five
practiced
syllables.
that earlier.
I practiced
Yeah.
that a lot.
That's a fiver.
I said it in front of the mirror a few times.
Did you? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, just to make sure.
Nice.
And so anyway, there might be other evidence, like, let's say the unspeakable thing I did was, geez, I don't want to think about something unspeakable. But anyway, somebody did the same unspeakable thing to you recently, and that was in your personnel file.
Mm-hmm.
That would still be exculpatory evidence because it shows that you might be adversely reacting to the same situation.
Might have a bias.
You have a bias in the situation. So that's still exculpatory evidence, and the prosecuting attorney is responsible for reading your personnel file and making sure whatever's applicable is handed over to the defense attorney.
Yeah, makes
Okay,
sense.
so that's the bill we're dealing with, and this has been an ongoing issue forever in the legislature, because the police don't like what they have is what's called a lorry list, and the Attorney General's office has it, and the county attorney has it, and it's a list of officers who have basically a list of officers who have exculpatory evidence in their file that the chief can put in there. Okay, the cop might not even know it's in there, and once it's in there, it can affect their job and whether they can get another job. And the officer currently has no means by which to appeal that decision, and so
Right.
that's what we're trying to resolve.
He's got no means of redress.
Yeah,
or-
exactly.
Okay.
Which is he should have some way of saying, no, I didn't do that.
Sure.
Yes.
So we really need to resolve this, and one of the things we need to do to resolve this is the list should be a helpful thing that they can use, but they're still responsible for reading that personnel file, because things on the lorry list might be things they did wrong, but there's other evidence that could be in there that could affect the case. And if they don't know it, and they find out 2 years after the guys have been convicted, that person can be acquitted based on the fact that they were not told.
They weren't given all the proper
They
evidence.
were not given a
on them.
proper defense.
Yep.
So we want to make sure that the prosecuting attorneys in the state understand that they are absolutely responsible for making sure that they're, just like any other witness in a case, have done a background check.
Right.
Or in this case, looked at the personnel file of the police officer. But anyway, the reason I bring it up is I think it was one of the lobbyists for the police or the police chiefs, I forget, I don't want to say specifically which one because I don't remember, came over to Claire Roulard and Paul Birch, who are on our committee, who are working hard trying to resolve this, because you're trying to be fair to everybody, but primarily fair to the defendant, because that's the obligation of we as legislators. You know, we want to be fair to the cops, but the defendant is the one who's looking at losing a chunk of their life.
Right.
Correct.
So they're the ones who we're most really responsible for. And I guess he came over and in effect threatened them and said, you know, well, you better deal with this, or we're going to take it. We'll have this fixed in the Senate. I don't care what you guys think. And so, in other words, there's the lobbyists are so in tight with the Senate that they feel like they can do anything they want to the House and have it fixed by the guys on the other side.
That's kind of the impression I've got. I mean, I've only been in the House working on 4 years now, but it seems a lot of times good House bills go over to the Senate and either get torpedoed or just totally maligned or
Amended so they're
Amended,
irrelevant, or
right. The lorry list is actually a very important list, and I understand why an officer, if he gets placed on that list, should have some kind of recourse in saying, this is why I shouldn't be placed on it. But I mean, let's face it, most of the officers that are placed on that list are placed on the list because they've done something wrong.
sometimes it's a police chief has something against them. That's
Correct.
why.
That's why they should have the redress.
Right.
But some of these officers have done something wrong, and that's why they end up on the list. And kind of, in my mind, I always kind of wonder is if their chief knows that they've done something wrong, they've perjured themselves on the stand, why are they still a police officer?
Well,
Yeah.
that was one of the things I brought up in a couple different bills this week. Is why aren't we prosecuting perjury?
Yes.
And assistant attorney general, I think, Ann Rice, is that assistant attorney general? She's sitting in the room, and I made a really strong point about that. We were doing another bill that had to do with whether things are notarized or not. And I says, well, what's the point of having the penalty is perjury when we're not prosecuting it? If we're not prosecuting a crime, that means that the law is irrelevant.
Well,
And so perjury. If this is personal because I had a cop when I was a teenager lie. My dad was a jarhead like you,
yep.
okay, but he wasn't quite as mellow as you are. I don't know what the difference is, but Dad was like he made Clint Eastwood look like a nice mellow guy compared
Really?
to my dad.
Really? Yeah.
Oh, Dad was like very, very
intense.
He scared my friends, and he never said anything.
I
to
only
them.
scared my daughter's friends. Just
Yeah.
Your friends.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Suitors.
Yeah. And but anyway, we were in court, and what had happened is me and my friend were leaving this party area. It's a parking lot, and the cops were busting everybody up the street. And they pulled in front of me and walked around my dad's Pinto, and my dad had all these computer papers. He was a computer programmer. And he had all the old green and white striped papers.
Oh yeah.
He
The
had a
dot
whole
matrix.
the dot matrix. He had a whole stack of them in the back of the Pinto.
Wow.
And under some were a couple of beer bottles my brother left. All right, so they pulled me over for underage possession,
Yeah.
and it went to court. If you remember the old hatchback Pintos,
Yep.
there's the back of the Pinto, and then there's a step up about this high, and then there's a slanted window.
Yep.
Okay, so that it looked, so that in court I couldn't say, well, if I knew there was beer back there, why didn't I get rid of it before the cops came? Was going to be my argument.
Right.
They headed me off at the pass and said we were following him down the street, and we saw the window, and we saw the beer in the back window. Now my father is just about freaking going out of his tree. His face is like bright red. He's so angry because he knows that's a lie, because that's impossible.
Right.
Because you would have to have a mirror up in the back window reflecting down on what's inside the car.
Right.
The perfect lighting and everything else to actually see beer bottles in the back of that vehicle while you're following him.
Because this was at night, correct?
It was at night.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the story Officer Ciccolone used was so entirely false. And what bothered me isn't that he lied in court. It's the judge figured out that he was lying. He acquitted me, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why don't they prosecute police officers who do perjure themselves?
Yep, no consequences.
Exactly.
Oh, the system
And-
protects its own.
Well, that's just it. If you're going to have a law like perjury, you should enforce it.
Absolutely.
Yep. And in that case, an officer that will commit perjury on a minor thing of a teenager having beer, what's he going to do on a major case?
Oh yeah, where he really wants a conviction.
Yeah,
Right.
or where a conviction's necessary, and that's why unfortunately our system gets the wrongfully convicted, is because someone's like, well, I really want a conviction. It becomes more of an ego thing. I'll lie and I'll put this guy in jail because I don't have the evidence, but I think
Yeah.
he's guilty.
Careerism, that's how you advance
is.
in any career. You get results.
Well, it's not only
But,
that.
I mean, I think it's the minority, but it's
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, I hope so, yeah.
I certainly hope so. I
Yeah.
believe it is. I think it's another thing too, is cops pretty much, like if they're patrolling a neighborhood, which is the old way of doing things, they pretty much know if this window's broken, who did it.
yeah.
Okay, but Johnny's a smart little SOB and gets away with it most of the time. So when they catch Johnny doing something else and they actually got him, stretching the truth a little bit seems justified because they got to get him for something. Which might sound good at the time, but long term is very bad.
Very bad news.
Yeah.
You don't want to confess the other things that you were doing in the neighborhood, huh?
Gary, did you break a window in the neighborhood?
No, but
Oh.
my buddy Willie had just taken 2 quarts of beer and a quart of Tango and hit him in the woods.
Yeah.
Before we got caught with the beer.
In the lorry list, I think, is a serious thing. The lorry list is there, I think, for a justifiable reason. But I also do believe that an officer should have a recourse. I know there was an officer that just went through, I think, all the way to the Supreme Court of the state,
Yeah.
trying to get his record corrected because he said he didn't do what the chief said he did.
Right. And he should be able to do that.
And he should be able to do that. So that's the proper thing. Anytime you're accused of something, you're
Yeah.
supposed to be innocent until you're proven guilty. So
There's another variable I checked into because it's kind of fun having people up testifying because you can cross-examine them a little bit. And one I did find out, I says, aren't police officers aware that there are things in their record? First they said no, most cops actually don't look at their record. But then I delved into it further, and the fact is, if they're going to court and they're a witness, and there is something in their file that the prosecuting attorney has used to, which was exculpatory evidence,
Right.
that police officer is almost always told about it. Because once he gets up on the witness stand, he can't be blindsided by something from the defense. So if they do have something in their file, a lot of times they're very aware of it.
Makes sense.
I think they should be. I mean, if you're a police chief and you have an officer that you think has done something that warrants the lorry list, number one, first question in my mind is, why is he still one of your police officers?
Well, that's a good question, but it's not that necessarily that legitimate. Because
but-
he could be written up for, he said he was out patrolling, and they found out he was back, sitting at Dunkin' Donuts. So
Yeah.
it's not really, he's not really lying on the stand. He's probably stretching the truth a bit. And he might get written up for it because he's supposed to be doing A and they found out he's doing B. It's just like any other employee.
Right.
When
Right.
You know.
But,
So, yes, he might have something in his file, but it's not really
And
worthy of being
I
fired.
would think, and I'm not really up to date. I have followed the Lori list some as different bills have come through the legislature, but I would think that anyone that's going to be placed on that list should be notified, saying you're being placed on the list for this reason.
Mm-hmm.
This is your avenue of appeal through
Right.
your department, and where it goes after that. Because I'm a big believer, whether you're a police officer, you're a defendant on the street, you have the right to due process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Lori list should be also a due process type
Yeah,
of
well,
thing.
one of the things the cops want, the lobbyist who's getting under our skin on the committee, is he says he basically is kind of demanding that an officer has the opportunity to clear his name before the court case goes.
Hmm.
And that's a little bit, because you're supposed to have a speedy trial.
Correct.
If we're gonna every time some exculpatory evidence comes up, a cop is going to be able to appeal it every single time. It could drag out a case forever.
Right.
So we said, well, if you have exculpatory evidence, this is what I said in the committee, is the worst possible scenario is you let somebody go free because of that evidence who probably should have been convicted. That's the worst case scenario. And the fact of the matter is our judicial system is set up to have the default position is to let somebody go free
Right.
rather than convict somebody who is.
And
So
as-
so appealing it after the fact is not a problem.
Who was it that's I forget who said the quote? It's better to let 10 guilty men go free
Franklin,
than
I
one.
think.
Was that Franklin? Than
Yes,
one innocent man be convicted.
it's
That's because he was guilty of everything. That's why.
Probably.
but I mean it
Probably
is
why I like him.
it's a good measuring stick. I
Yeah.
think we keep having these cases come up that with new DNA technology or exonerating people who have been in jail for
Yeah.
decades and stuff.
Yeah.
Capital murder cases where people
Capital
are
murder
being let out.
cases.
Yeah.
So it's important, and like I said, I think if you set the Lori list up, where if an officer is going to be placed on it, he's informed, and you can go through that due process, unless whatever he did is involving the actual case that he's working on at that moment,
Right.
you're not really going to have a lot of cases where you're going to have to say, well, geez, we're going to have to put the trial off for a year.
Right.
So I think there's ways to handle it. It kind of sounds like, as usual, when you get in the legislature, each side wants everything. The
Yeah.
police want, oh, geez, no, we can do whatever. But there's a middle ground there, and I want to give an officer, if he is placed on that, the due process to say, this is why he shouldn't be on it,
Sure.
and go through the process. But again, if he can't get through that due process and he has to testify, then obviously that information needs to go to the defense lawyer.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
And it's like you say, it's everybody wants everything, and so I mean, I think the fact that this goes through as amended is really good amendment, a lot better than what the Senate gave us. It would give them due process. Right now, they've got nothing. All they know is there's a alleged list that they may or may not be on, and that's all. And so it really bothers the cops. And this gives them some way of finding out, A, that they're on it, and a way to appeal it. So I think it's great for the cops, but this one lobbyist for the cops is probably going to scuttle the whole thing.
and that's unfortunate. Like I said, I want to see everyone have due process because it's part of our constitutional
Yeah,
rights.
absolutely. Yeah.
So that's very important. Whether you're a cop, you're someone walking down the street, or you are the criminal that everyone thinks. There's a process that we're supposed to follow. And there's our constitutional rights and they need to be protected. And one of the things that a lot of laws or a lot of bills that come through the House, I don't think a lot of people look at that constitutional fact.
No.
And it's I'm not a constitutional scholar, but that is one of the things that I like to look at. And it's kind of like, how does that work under our Constitution?
Right. Yeah, and sometimes you have conflicting constitutional It's not necessarily as clear cut as we'd like.
It's not. A lot of people think everything's black and white, but it's not necessarily.
Right.
So especially.
Hey, so anyway, before we get, because we've only got like half an hour left. So you served in the Marines. Thank you very much, by the way.
Yeah. I was in the Marine Corps from 1981 to 2007.
Holy man, that's
Wow,
a
long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually people smarten up after 4 years. What happened?
Yeah, well, I got a hard head, you know. But I originally did 4 years, decided I wanted to get married, raise a family. So I came home, got married. Decided I kind of missed the Marine Corps and joined the reserves.
Is that like Stockholm Syndrome?
Could be. Some people
Yeah.
say it's well.
Yeah,
I think
good example.
so.
of
Some
it,
people
yes.
say I'm a glutton for punishment, you know, which could be why I'm in the state legislature too. But
Yeah, it
So
does
I-
speak a lot to your judgment right there.
Yeah.
But anyway,
so I came home, like I said, started a family and kind of missed the Marine Corps and joined the reserves. Through the reserves, ended up back on active duty, back in reserves, back on active duty, and reserves did deployment for Desert Shield, Desert Storm.
now in '81, did you end up in Grenada
No, actually, it didn't.
with
That
Clint
was-
Eastwood?
No,
That
it was,
cool.
and it was
I know,
very.
right?
I served with Clint Eastwood.
It was very disappointing actually because I was in Hawaii with 3rd Marines, and we were just actually finishing a Westpac, which is a 6-month deployment throughout Asia,
Right.
and we had just got back to K Bay, Hawaii, and you had Grenada kicked off. We had the Beirut bombing of the barracks.
Oh gosh.
Yep.
I got a friend of mine. He was in the barracks, and got thrown. I don't know how many feet, like 50 yards or 50 feet. I
Yeah.
don't know what it was. Landed in a tree, lost his eye.
Yep.
In the Beirut thing.
Wow.
But I mean, so it's actually kind of demotivating. We just got off the ship, and we'd been traveling all around the world, and then all of a sudden, everything explodes. We're all like, and we're stuck in Hawaii for another 7 months.
Well, that doesn't sound
Oh, yeah.
stuck in
Oh,
Hawaii.
come
I don't know
on,
if
yeah.
stuck is.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
It's
you poor guy. Stuck in Hawaii.
it's a mindset though when you're
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
military that it's kind of like, okay,
I
we
know.
didn't want to be in Hawaii. We wanted to be
Right,
where
yeah.
things were going on.
Yeah.
But then, like I said, we did the reserve thing, got activated for Desert Shield, Desert Storm, served with that. Actually just had a great 25th reunion
Wow.
Oh,
here
cool.
in Murphy's Tap Room.
Oh, all
and
right,
it was-
all right.
Great. Yeah, we got a little bit of coverage on it there. And
Now, how many guys showed up for that?
we probably had 45, 50 guys.
Wow.
It was a good turnout. And it
Now,
was great.
Was that from all over the country or New England?
Mainly
maybe?
New England. I mean,
Okay.
some of them have moved, so they had to fly in.
Okay.
So it was great. And then I continued to serve. Got called up in 2003 in support of Enduring Freedom. Didn't actually get to Afghanistan, but we were in support of that.
Yeah.
And then activated in 2005 and did Iraqi Freedom. Some TAC numbers I can't remember, but did a 7-month stint in Fallujah with
Wow.
1st Battalion, 25th Marines, and kind of a pinnacle of a military career. It was taxing, but it was also rewarding that this country still has that number of young people that are willing to put everything on the line. And they were putting everything on the line.
Oh, yeah.
We lost 11 there during a course of 7 months, and over 200 that were wounded.
IEDs mostly, or
IEDs, snipers, really a mix of things.
does it pretty much upset you that Obama's let down the ISIS?
The FCC would probably shut you down if I really told you what I felt to process.
Wait! I don't think the FCC has anything to do with cable.
Well, they do
They do?
to some extent. That's why we can't swear. Which is
And
hard
that
for
was
Gary.
kind
He's
of
got,
what I was enlightening on to. I
he's
don't
got
think
quite
you
the
could.
potty mouth. So
yeah, I worked in
That's
a machine shop my whole life.
But
why we're hard
it is
Yeah.
very disturbing, I think, to most of the military, no matter what branch they were that served in Iraq, is the fact that we worked so hard to get to a point in Iraq where they were almost stable. I'm not going to say they were stable,
Right.
but they were almost
You
able.
still had all those religious factions, the Ba'ath Party
Yeah.
and
and
all this stuff.
they
but
don't
still,
think like we think, but they were pretty close in the fact that Obama just said, well, on this date, we're leaving.
Well, that was negotiated under the Bush administration, though. I know everyone
that's-
likes to blame Obama.
Actually,
for
no,
that,
that's
but-
not true. Bush administration had negotiated certain things. The last thing that was left was for us to negotiate a status of forces agreement that would leave probably a 10 or 15,000 man force in there.
Right.
And in order to negotiate that, you have to want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Obama didn't want to do it. He says, we're done with it. And then I can go out on the campaign trail and say, hey, I told you I was going to end the war in Iraq, and I ended it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's several of his campaign speeches where he actually said he ended the war in Iraq. Well, number one, no president ends any war. It's the military men on the ground that end it.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, he didn't end it. He pulled everybody out, and now, as a result, you have the rise of ISIS. You had, the country almost collapsed again. It's starting to regain some footing, and we're starting to collapse ISIS again.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because he's putting boots on the ground. He'll tell you he's not putting boots on the ground, but
Well, when they talk about, and you know this, when they talk about sending advisors, for example, that's a word that you hear a lot.
some heavily
we're sending
heavily
advisors.
armed advisors.
and
And that was the same word JFK used when we were escalating in Vietnam. Oh,
Vietnam.
we're sending advisors, and they end up,
well,
of course, in combat.
and there was, and I can't remember, it was several months ago now, there was, I believe it was Army Special Forces was killed. And it was like, well, he wasn't killed in combat. And it's kind of like, he got shot or he got blown up or he got something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just because you say he was an advisor doesn't mean that he wasn't in combat.
Right.
And
Isn't there a problem with that? Not only because they're lying, because that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
We go back to the Lori list. Yeah, this always comes.
Yeah.
Does it affect if the guy gets killed? Does that affect the widow if he died in combat versus died
yes,
as a
it could
consultant?
affect her benefits.
Oh, interesting.
It could affect descendants' benefits if he had kids. If he's not in combat, does he get a Purple Heart?
Right.
Because you can be hurt or killed on military service and not qualify
Right,
for
yeah.
the Purple Heart if you're not
If you
in
get-
combat.
If you get drunk and
So I didn't know this. So it can affect the benefits that a widow would get.
I believe so,
depending on-
yes.
Interesting. I didn't realize that.
And I think one of the most important things, obviously not for the person that was killed, but for the family, is the
Yeah.
fact that he's recognized, he gets the Purple Heart, and recognized for the fact that he was serving in combat for his country.
right.
And the Fort Hood massacre, how many years did the Obama administration go, it was workplace violence, just because the guy was yelling Allah
Ali Akbar, yeah.
it was work. No, it was a terrorist attack, and they had ignored that guy for a long time, and they refused to give those guys the proper benefits, the Purple Hearts, until just recently here. And it's a very, in my eyes, a big black eye on the Obama administration.
It's totally disrespectful.
And I really don't think, I said, I'm out of the military now, I'm retired. I know what a lot of retired military people think about the Obama administration.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think it does carry over into the active duty military, where they don't respect Obama because he doesn't respect them. They don't think that Obama has their back. And they don't think Obama has the best interest of the military at heart.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people don't like George W. Bush for this reason or that reason. And I can tell you, he probably wasn't my favorite president because I thought he spent too much money, and I didn't think he was
Yeah, he was
as conservative.
no fiscal
No.
conservative, certainly.
But I can tell you what, there was never a time when he visited Iraq or he visited Camp Lejeune in North Carolina when I was there, that you didn't know when he was there that he cared about the troops and that he had our military's back. You didn't hear about, well, we're not going to... I mean, Obama just vetoed a 2.1% pay raise for the military. We got people protesting, saying they deserve $15 an hour to flip a hamburger in McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
And he's all over it, saying, well, yeah, they should get $15. But he vetoed a pay raise for our military of 2.1%. And if you go through the ranks, I mean, you got to be probably an E4 or an E5 before you can even start thinking that you're getting $15 an hour. And that's if you work a 40-hour work week. When you get deployed, there's no 40-hour work week.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of times 24/7. So what a hypocrite
Right.
is all I can say. And I'll say it right now. If you're out there and you're flipping a hamburger in McDonald's, you're throwing a frozen burger patty on there, you don't deserve $15 an hour. If you want to, there was a veteran who really upset me and really got me mad. He was talking about how he loved to cook for Kentucky Fried Chicken. He loved his job, but he couldn't raise his family on that job, and he deserved $15 an hour. He's not cooking. He's throwing frozen chicken in an oven or in a fryer later. And then
he's not
a-
he's not like a real cook.
If you want to make money and you really love cooking, you go to a restaurant and you cook somebody a meal.
Right.
And that's probably a little radical for a lot of people, but
Do you think Obama could resurrect his the military's impression of him if he allowed transgenders to use the men's and girls' rooms on military bases?
absolutely not.
No,
I
that
mean,
wouldn't help.
I don't think there's anything at this point that he can do to help.
Well,
But
he's on his way out anyway. And
on-
he doesn't care anyway. He's just running out the clock.
On that particular issue,
you know what I mean?
I'm sitting
what does
there,
Obama care now?
and I hear all this debate going on. Well, men should be able to use the women's room if they identify as a woman. Really? And everyone's like, well, geez, you know. And you say, well, bad things can happen if you let this. They say, well, it's not the transgendered that's doing the bad. Well, they might be right. It might not be the transgendered person that's doing the bad thing. It's not the one that's trying to take photos, which Target just unisexed all theirs. And
Target, guy just got
arrested.
Just got arrested for that.
Oh, really?
Because
So-
that's what I've said. You know, I've said that. I said because before you got in, you've been 2 terms.
Yep.
Before that, in 2009, I think it was, the Democrats got a transgender bathroom bill through, and it's like the Democrats don't understand the male psyche, or the desire to see naked women is so strong that if you let little boys go in the girls' locker room, guess what they're going to do?
Well, a lot of it's
Exactly.
political. It's not that I don't think it's that they don't understand. It's just political
No,
correctness.
It could
if
be,
you
but
question it, then
I
you're-
know, but I've talked to a few, of, and it's like it goes in one ear out the. They
It's-
don't get it.
There's no comprehension, and I don't understand why 95% of the public should be made to feel uncomfortable to make 0.5% of the public
Right.
comfortable. Now, and I brought this up on a Facebook discussion that was going back and forth
Those
online.
go back and forth a lot.
And it's kind of like, show me a case where a man who identified as a woman, was dressed as a woman, went into a woman's restroom, did their business, came out, got arrested and convicted.
I don't think there's anybody.
Is
Right.
there a
Unless
case?
they went in and made a big deal about it.
Exactly.
Right.
So
But- yeah.
what I'm saying, this is a bunch of legislation that's in search of a problem,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because even if it's not an attractive female, and I'm trying to be politically correct, are you gonna
Wait,
are you gonna go
You're
up?
trying to be politically correct.
Are you gonna go up to a female and say, "I think you're transgendered, and I want you to prove that you're a woman"?
Who's going to do that? Nobody's going to
It
do
does-
that.
doesn't happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
So this is, to me, it's a smokescreen.
Yeah.
And as I posted on it afterwards, I think it's a BS issue, and I really wonder what our government's up to. Why we're all
Why we're
worried
being
about these
distracted by,
bathrooms.
yeah, exactly.
I just think it's all peas. I just what's that?
We're distracted because there's 2 nuclear plants leaking.
Oh, that's not good.
That's what's going on.
2 nuclear
I mean,
plants
it
leaking,
could
yeah.
be anything, but
Yeah.
I'm just like, all of a sudden this is a big issue because North Carolina, I guess, was the first state.
Yeah.
They tried to push it, and they said, well, you have to use the restroom of the biology that you was born with. Again, is it that bad? I haven't read the bill, so I don't know exactly what it says.
Right.
But again, if you're a woman and you're dressed up as a man, and I guess they can take the hormones so they get the beard and stuff,
Who knew?
Who would know?
Right, right.
The thing is, they want to make an issue out of it, and it is kind of an agenda item. It's kind of like, just go do your business, mind your own business, and more than likely, everyone else is going to mind their business because they don't know.
Right, right.
Hey,
Yeah.
so running for Senate, completely different issue. What's your stand, or I don't even know what district are you going to run?
I'm running for Senate District 1, which
Which
is
is?
Coos County and about a third of Grafton County up in the northern part of the state.
Okay, so way up north.
Way up north, it's about 2-hour drive from the southern end to the northern end, and about a 2-hour drive from the east end to the west.
Wow,
It's a huge district.
that
Yeah,
is huge.
jeez.
Who was in there?
Currently, it is, although I don't like to use his name, but it's Jeff Woodburn, who's the
Okay.
Democratic minority leader right now.
Okay, okay. So how do you stand on the Medicare expansion?
Medicaid expansion
Medicaid, sorry.
is, to me, it's a no-go. The bill that was just passed through the House, I voted against, I spoke against in the committee, and one of the big reasons I'm against it, number one, it's a major expansion of federal government into the state, and then it's a thing of smoke and mirrors, where they're telling everybody, well, we're not putting any tax money into this plan. It's not costing New Hampshire tax dollars. Very clear distinction. Well, it's not. But that's because they're hiding the tax increase behind insurance companies and hospitals. So when someone goes and buys their insurance, health insurance, their premium goes up $50 a month or $70. And all the politicians, and I don't really claim to be a politician, although some people say that, can sit here in Concord or wherever their district is and say, we didn't raise your taxes.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's a typical, and in my mind, and actually I told the speaker that it's a Washington, D.C. bill where you hide all the cost increases behind somebody else so you can sit here and say that you didn't cost anybody any more money, but it's costing New Hampshire residents money.
That's how the game is played, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Opium crisis.
Opium crisis is very...
Is it that big a deal up north? I would think
it's
it
huge.
is. Yeah.
It is huge. Probably one of the number one issues. We need more treatment beds. Number one.
Yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I know the Democrats are pushing to, we need to spend more money, we need to spend more money. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but they just want to spend it because that way they can go out and say, hey, we're spending more money.
Right.
We need to spend it appropriately. We do need more treatment beds. I think, as much as I hate to say it, some of the legislation going through on some of the prescription opioids is a step in the right direction,
Yeah.
because New Hampshire prescribes millions of doses of opioids.
Yeah, it must be a real pain to live here or something.
Well, it
I
must
see what you
be.
did
I was in one of those hearings, and I'm sitting there, and they were saying the doses of opioids that were prescribed in New Hampshire, and I'm like,
Well, I don't. In 2014, I went through radiation on this side of the neck,
yep,
and then I had rotator cuff surgery in the summer. Then they radiated this side of my neck, and then I had carotid artery surgery in December. That's when we had the speakers race in the end of 14. Yeah.
yep.
And every time I left the hospital, I could have walked out with a script for Percocet. No, what is it called? Oxycontin.
Oxycontin, Percocet,
Yeah.
they're all.
Whatever. And it's just too easy.
Sometimes, though, too, I think you got to be a little bit careful about limiting what doctors can do because, I know of a situation, someone close to me who has kind of had the inverse of that, where she really needed medication, that kind of medication, and had to jump through a lot of hoops to get it because there are already some constraints.
Correct.
So, without getting
And
too
you gotta
far into
be-
the details
but
of it, but
the,
so you got to be careful not to overcorrect.
Doing some research on it, and I have, because it, like I said, it's a huge issue all across the state,
Right.
and you got to look at what opioids were originally made for: terminal cancer patients, short-term operation or surgery patients. they were never intended for, okay, you've got a chronic pain thing, we're going to give you opioids. It was never intended for that. If you're a terminal cancer patient, suffering pain, they're very effective, and I don't think the state should worry about that.
No, because if you get addicted to it, so what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the problem came in where, again, in my mind, it's government interference, where the government has this survey and they ask patients, how was your pain? And, well, you know, I'm really still at about a 5. Well, the doctors want it around down 1 or 2 so they can get a good rating that they're
Right,
treating
right.
it. So, I mean, there's more than just controlling the opioids. It's the fact, and maybe it's a societal thing, where we've got, well, we shouldn't feel any pain. And the doctors are trying to make sure their patients don't feel
I
any
was
pain.
at physical therapy when they were for my rotator cuff surgery, and I went to this place in Henniker. They're really, really nice ladies. I said that at the time I told them that they were the dark arts of the medical community because they
Yeah.
really torture you, and they seem
Yeah.
to enjoy it.
Did you see
but
how
it-
bad we made him sweat?
Yeah.
You see the tears rolling down his cheek? That was awesome. But anyway, I mean, it was painful, okay?
Yeah.
And then this woman, this other woman's, you know, you can hear what's going on around you.
Yeah.
They asked her, so what's your pain level? She goes, oh, it's got to be like an 8. I'm going, are you kidding me? 8, 9, that means you're buckled over in pain and you can't move and you're screaming.
And you can barely speak.
You
know?
can barely talk. You know, not your, you know, it's just about 8, you know, it doesn't hurt, you know. It's like people were pansy-ized.
And I do think that
not
some
everybody.
of it.
I see. I have a hard time though making those kinds of judgments about anyone who deals with chronic pain. As someone who myself
That's
has
why
never
you're
dealt
not
with
a
chronic
Republican.
pain. Well, that's
Well,
true. But as someone
I
who's
mean-
never dealt with chronic pain, like I couldn't sit here and go, "Oh, well, you know,
If-
they think they need opiates, but they really don't."
If,
You know what I
if
mean?
you're dealing with chronic pain, though, and a lot of patients when they first started taking this stuff, I don't think realized that if you take this for a certain amount of time, you're going to become addicted.
Right.
So they're just the only thing they're looking at. Okay, it stopped my pain,
Yeah.
so I'm going to keep taking it.
Yeah.
And then finally, when the doctor says, "Oh, wait a minute, we got to shut this off," well, then they're already addicted.
Right.
So they're looking for that
Relief.
and
Yeah.
that relief, and they turn to heroin is one of the things that we've heard.
Oh yeah.
On the workman's comp, I'm on the labor committee. We're trying to set up a thing that if somebody's on opioids for a certain length of time, their doctor has to come up with a plan to bring them off opioids.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily true in all practices, and maybe it needs to be.
No, I go to a lot of different things on this subject, and you hear time and time again people who, you know, the doctor gave them this much, you know, prescription, and after a while, you know, the doctor didn't keep track. You know, and the
Yeah.
next
Yep.
thing you know, there was cancer. One woman I heard talking, she's 62 years old, went in for cancer treatment. They're just giving her opioids, and the doctor says, well, you're all done, you're good.
Yeah, there's no.
And next thing you know, she's buying heroin off the street.
Yeah.
She started buying the Oxycontin off the street, but that's really expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, the heroin's got cheaper. And you hear more and more, it's not young kids that are dying of heroin. I mean, 30, 40, 50-year-old people.
Oh sure. Yeah.
I mean,
Veterans who turn to it
Veterans.
because they can't get what they need from the VA anymore, and
And again, can't get into the details, but I was just trying to assist a veteran. And obviously, that's a thing that's close to my heart, being a veteran, but
yeah.
he called me up and he went to a VA clinic, was in extreme pain. He has back issues. He's had 3 or 4 surgeries, and he had a problem with opioids,
Mm-hmm.
and he was on a program to take him off. So they kept telling him, well, we'll do something, we'll do something. He was there for 11 days. They never did anything. So his father finally came and picked him up and took him to a clinic here in Manchester, where they got his pain under control, so he could. So and the VA is just a disaster, anyways. But
Yeah.
it's another thing.
Yeah.
But the reason why he was having that issue is because the VA put him on opioids as a way to control his back pain, so they didn't have to do the surgery that he needed. And now it's snowballed. The guy
Yeah.
probably should be 100% disabled, and he's having a hard time doing that paperwork.
Of course.
So it's
The other thing on this subject that as a state senator to keep in mind is a lot of you said a lot of beds for treatment. Most treatment facilities do about a 28 or 30-day program.
and it's not sufficient.
Well, it is sufficient if you handle it correctly. The reason it's not sufficient is because they'll get done with that 30-day program and give them a certificate of completion.
Yep.
They're not completed anything.
Right.
They've
No.
made the first step.
Right.
But
Right.
what they really need is follow-up. And most of the places that the state is helping fund, if they're going to be expecting money from the state, need to be responsible enough to say, okay, we've done this 30-day program. What's your success rate? Are the people that they've come out of your program a year later, are they still free and clean and sober?
Yep.
Do you have follow-up? Are you working with places like Hope for Recovery so you're getting them into the recovery community as soon as they get out? Because it's a lifelong
And
issue.
I think that was, and I never completed that thought, was my thought where we have the Democrats pushing, well, we need to spend more money on beds, which is true, but it's got to be properly spent. Because if you just say, okay, go set up a place and put 20 beds in, and we're going to give you a couple $1 million, and they don't actually help anyone or get anyone off opioids, it's wasted money.
Right.
And for a lot of these people, especially with the fentanyl that they're mixing into it, this is a life or death thing. The other thing with the Medicaid expansion, one of the big pushes was, well, this is going to help us get over the opioid crisis. Where?
Right.
How does it help?
Well,
And one of the thoughts...
In some ways it does, because some of the uninsured now can actually afford to go into a 28-day
Yep.
program.
Oh, okay.
That's
Yep.
that's kind of the
But
argument.
one of my thoughts is, and one of the stigmas is, of course, there's a lot of stigma to being a drug addict, and there's a lot of people who are not sympathetic with drug addicts.
Right.
And I've given quite a bit of thought on why is it that we kind of have this stigma where, and it's not my thought, I think one of the most profound things that Governor Christie said, that if you're pro-life, you have to be pro-life for the whole life.
Right.
And that he was talking about the epidemic. And so I'm trying to think, why is it that we look down so bad on a drug addict? You know, and we keep saying, well, this is a health crisis. Well, the reason why we look down on it, we don't treat it as a health crisis.
Well, we treat
If-
them like criminals for the most part.
Well, you do some, but if you have a health crisis, where do you go? You go to a hospital. If you have a drug crisis, you go to that treatment facility over there that
Yeah,
nobody
that's-
wants in their backyard.
That's a good point. Yep.
So
Yep.
why aren't our hospitals setting up wings or whatever they have to do?
They've got a lot of free room too. I don't know that that's always true, but I've gone like in Concord Hospital and walked down like a wing of their hospital. It's nothing.
Really?
But in the North Country, we have an issue where we have hospitals and they put additions on, and they're usually for administrative offices.
Sure.
But the real restriction isn't necessarily the patient rooms, it's the number of nurses and doctors that they have available.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so that's just something that I thought of, rather than making this
Yeah.
a facility that nobody wants in their backyard so it ends up in the middle of nowhere. If it's truly a health issue, why aren't we treating it as a health
Yeah.
issue, and you go and you be hospitalized for 30 days, and then maybe you go to that 28-day thing. And
That's an interesting insight. I've never heard anyone really point that out before.
No,
but
that's a really good idea, because
Yeah.
that first few days you almost need some sort of medication to taper off.
yeah.
Yeah.
Theoretically, I'll tell you another, and I know some hardcore people in the treatment field, and one of them says what you really should do is arrest them, and I kind of agree with this. You catch somebody with opium, arrest them, put them in Valley Street, 2 weeks. Okay, first of all, you arrest them and say you're in here for the next 6 months. 2 weeks after they've gone through DTs or they've gone through the withdrawals, which are hell.
Yep.
Okay, that's good. They've been through hell. Now you get 2 weeks out. They're clean. They're not. Their head's not screwed on tight, but they're clean. And you say, look, you're going to serve another 5.5 months, or you can go into this 28-day program if you want to get help. Your choice. So you're not sentencing them to a year, so they don't have a felony, because it is a medical issue partially, but it is a criminal issue also. So
Definitely.
So it seems like, especially if you catch some heroin addict who gets caught because he's just stealing a VCR or something stupid. I think you could get a lot done that way. Dry him out in Valley Street and then say, look, and the next time you catch him, you get him 9 months. Says, look,
Well, and that's sounds kind of like drug court.
a little bit.
I mean, we've looked at a lot of, at least 2 different systems of drug courts in Coos County as the delegation.
Yeah.
And we actually made a line item. Actually, I moved to make a line item to establish a drug court in Coos County. But as we're looking at it, it's probably not feasible because of the fact that it's such a rural county. Everyone's so spread out.
Yeah, it's wicked tough.
And we don't have.
Because you need the courthouse. You need a facility for treatment because they have to go to treatment X number of days a week, and you need this. It's like a collective
And
almost.
you got to have the oversight. Grafton County's got a well-established one, but that's some pretty intensive oversight where they have people, do random visits. But they literally, when we went to that program to look at it, they said they still have people who get arrested. They tell them what the program entails, and it means when they come out of the program, if they successfully complete it, they don't have a felony they don't have a conviction.
That's actually, we got to work on that. I don't think that's true. If they were accused of a felony, because right now what they have to do is admit to the felony to get into the program.
Yes, they do.
What we need to do once you get a state senator is change that so if they are actually successful after 3 years, that's wiped from their record.
Oh, okay.
That's and Grafton County said that's how it went.
Yeah, that's
That
not.
they, so
It might go. That's not how it goes. At least I believe it was in Rockingham.
so that if they completed the program successfully, their criminal record was, and they have a success rate 20-30%. But I mean, a lot of these programs, they're only maybe 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, AA is about, I think, 12 to 17, but that's a lot because AA has gotten a lot softer over the years. It used to be real hard, but
Really?
Yeah.
oh yeah. Right now it's everybody, oh yeah, it's doing good. You're going to meeting, yeah, that's good, that's nice.
Well, and
Before they come in, the old guys just slap you around.
Yeah.
But it's kind of hard to wrap your head around what an addict thinks. A lot of people tell me, how can anyone do that? Especially with heroin, they're sticking a needle in their eye. And I says, I don't know. I don't understand it.
I'll give it to you. It's wicked simple. First of all, you're a Christian. I know that's probably not illegal. I don't think that's illegal to say. We got 2 seconds.
Not yet.
Okay, 2 seconds. It's really, really simple. It's a sin. Okay, it is like they're tempted, so they put on this iron vest. Every time they use, they put another layer on this iron vest. Okay?
Yep.
The heroin is a giant magnet trying to kill them. That's all it wants is them dead. But it's very attractive, so they put on this iron vest. And eventually, they can't step away from that. They actually need to be physically moved away from that magnet. And if they get into treatment, they're walking further and further away from that magnet. And if they keep going in that direction, they can be successful. If you can get them long enough, 1-2 years away from that magnet, now they will always be attracted to that magnet if they get too close. But if after a while they learn methods by which to stay away and stay in the right direction. But it's once you're addicted, the addict is no longer deciding what to do. The heroin is deciding for them. That's why
Yeah.
people don't understand, because they can't imagine. But if you understood that it's actually the heroin dictating to the addict what to do,
Yeah.
it is, they no longer have any grasp of control.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
we gotta go.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Leon, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes,
It's
thank
a pleasure.
you. Nice to meet you.
I'll have you on again, because I cut you off too much, because
It's all right.
I'm a
You know,
politician, I can't help it.
we're politicians. We like to yak at each other. You know.
All right.
thanks,
We're
sir.
out. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Have a good one.
All right.